Hello and welcome to Science Unscripted. It's Connor here.
And Gabe?
We have a couple of emails to start off with. Gabe, one of them made you really excited from New York.
Yeah, first of all, just a shout out to Jane listening on WAMC. That's the NPR syndicate in Albany, New York. Thank you for getting in touch, writing a long story with regard to a podcast that we did a while ago on acts of kindness and the effect of those. I can't even remember, Connor, when we did that show.
It depends. I have two in mind.
Yeah?
It may be kindness is different than charity. We talked about whom people give to and why and what kinds of people give.
That one, charity.
Acts of charity in different ways, and what differentiates those two groups of people the one group who donates to everyone equally and the other group who kind of keeps things closer to home.
What I had flash in my mind was also an email that we got out of Canada, someone hiking through the woods who heard our podcast about doing acts of kindness randomly.
That was the second one.
And then was inspired by that. And I believe was walking in the forest and saw a candy wrapper, decided to pick it up as her part of act of altruism.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, in the candy wrapper was feces because somebody used the candy wrapper as toilet paper.
Yeah. Human.
Anyways,
fecalia. No, and that one, by the way, that listener's name, Meg, I believe. Meg is her name. And just a little detail here. Usually, when we publish these podcasts, they go out everywhere, all across all the podcast platforms that you use.
Sure.
They also go online on dw.com. And you don't have to, but you can provide a couple of links. I have linked back to that episode every time since publication. Every new episode links back to the episode where one of our listeners touched human poop because of our show. Sorry, we're going all over the place here, but it was a great
it's
email.
a roundabout way of saying thanks to Jane for getting in touch, WAMC. We also got one from Gabriel.
That's your name, Gabriel.
Yeah, that's my name, Gabe. And he was writing with regard to the episode we did a couple of weeks back about New Year's resolutions, where we said be specific. Gabriel says he's not specific at all because he has a friend who has really abstract New Year's resolutions, like be more brave this year. And that he said that his friend was able to think about that. And that had a concrete change in his life, which is interesting.
It took me a second to get around to that idea, but I think what is different is how else would you become more brave? It's not like I want a six-pack for summer.
Yeah.
I want to be able to run 10K without stopping.
At least 3 times in 2026, I want to step in and stop a thief red-handed.
Is that your goal?
Yeah.
I hope. Good luck.
Like a pickpocket. I'm going to chase them all around Bonn train station or something like that. Yeah.
Don't get hurt. Last email reference here. Thank you to one of our listeners who turned out to be a fellow ultra runner and was writing in. It ended up being, she was actually referencing a past episode and different music. I thought she was asking me to provide more information on the music we played last week, which was from Mango.
Yeah,
and his crew, his 3-man band
down in Adelaide?
Yeah, Australia.
Australia, sorry.
Yeah, and it's Wine Science. If you want to find it on Spotify, it's really only Spotify and Bandcamp if you're looking for it. I kind of failed to mention that clearly at the end. I'm not even sure if Mango heard that. I hope you heard it, Mango. I hope you're listening right now. He was listening on the radio in Australia. But anyway, if you're looking, or if you enjoyed that music last week, look for Wine Science.
All right.
Going into some quick science here that is not related to wine. And we're going to head up into the mountains of Austria for a moment.
Yeah,
because
you've been there. Yeah.
I was just there. This one kind of killed me because I was so close to possibly the most famous cow in the world right now, Veronica.
I know where you're going with this. Okay. Yeah.
Veronica is high up in the whole area in that part of kind of southern Austria is very mountainous, and somewhere up there is a cow that, if you'd like to go online and watch the video yourself, you can do it. It's a cow that has demonstrably shown it can use a broom, like the kind of outdoor broom you would sweep leaves away with. And that she can pick it up. Actually, first of all, rearrange it.
I'm assuming she uses her mouth to do this.
Yeah.
Her teeth picks the broom up with her
mouth.
And then what? Does what with it?
And then that's the part that makes it so interesting. She does 2 different things.
Okay.
with that broom. She either uses the bristly end to kind of scratch her back, right? Like all of us know that feeling, right? When there's a part of your body that itches but you can't scratch it. Usually, for me, it's the middle of my back.
Yeah.
Right? And for a cow, that's everywhere.
Well, I've passed by cows with all these flies flying around their eyes. It makes me feel sick to my stomach for them.
It must be terrible. There are a decent amount of cows around here. Like when I go biking,
back home in Wisconsin, there are cows everywhere.
So you're just nauseous all the time everywhere you go. Veronica has kind of solved, well, maybe not the flies, because that is usually it's a tail whip, right? That gets the flies to move away.
Yeah.
Uses the bristles to scratch her back, and if it's that skin, that sensitive skin on the underside, flips it around.
Nice.
And uses the handle, that soft, smoother handle, to get her underside. And that makes her different than some of the other categories of animals that we've seen using tools, like dolphins, like octopi, like corvids. And that was the one that popped in mind. I've seen corvids bend metal to create a hook to dig something out of a pipe in order to eat it. What's different, though, is the multi-use of the same tool. That puts cows now, or Veronica, in the same category as humans and primates. I
was going to say, we've seen chimpanzees use a vending machine, put tokens into a vending machine.
Oh, that one. Yeah, we went to the Netherlands for that one.
No, but okay. All right.
Yeah, last thing I'll say is kind of kudos to the farmer and organic baker. We emailed him. Our colleague Carla Bleicher sent an email saying, hey, Gabe, Connor, and I,
we're going to drive down or up to Austria.
Vertically up, but southeast.
And he declined.
On behalf or for his cow. He's like, look, this is the world's most famous cow right now. Everyone wants to come here, and I am going to say no, because my cow is 13 years old. Started doing this at about age 3. 13 years old, that's old for a cow. They can get to 15, anywhere up to 20. The world's oldest cow, I just found out, Big Bertha from Ireland.
Of course.
48. Okay. I wanted to ask you, by the way, this is a good time to remind all of our listeners that Gabe can do a pretty good cow impression. Go ahead, Gabe. You can do better than that. So that's Gabe.
Hey, that man understands bovine well-being, I'll tell you.
Yeah, no, so
right
good job. I forget his name. It was started with a W. Good job to the farmer for saying no to us. Sometimes we have to be told no.
I got one here. We're going to head to the workplace, and it's specifically, this study was conducted at a national retail chain in the United States. They have 250 stores across the country, and they have a policy on your birthday. The boss comes to you and hand delivers a card and a gift. Every single employee at the company is supposed to get a gift and a card.
That's a nice place.
Okay. This study was done to see what happens when you get slighted by that boss.
So you've watched everyone else get their birthday gift and card, and then it's your turn.
And I don't get mine? Okay, this is what they found. There's a 5-day grace period where there are no negative consequences. So what starts happening at day 5 is called absenteeism. And this was observed in this particular study as more paid sick time. So workers are taken off, even though, we don't know whether it's because they're sick or not, but it's more paid sick time. Arriving late or later than usual, leaving early, and taking longer breaks. And the way they calculated in this study was that it ended up being 2 working hours per month less after that 5-day period. So the boss doesn't come and deliver your card and your gift. You start showing this behavior.
Was this research an example of what a private corporation allowing or even hiring on researchers to see what the impact of...
The researchers wanted to study this in real time and reached out to companies, and this particular company allowed it to happen. I'm not going to say the name of the company. That wasn't even published, but they wanted to find out what happens when when employees are slighted minimally. There's a lot of research on major infractions or harassment, different kinds of toxic work behavior, and the effect that can have on workers. We know that. It's obviously not good. What we did not know is that even such a minimal slight as coming late with a birthday card can have a real significant impact on worker morale.
That's that is kind of shocking. You would think that if you're going to have that kind of impact, it's something very dramatic, like a I don't know, you didn't get your bonus, to take a really cliched example, or the promotion, something dramatic instance. But that's a small thing to have that big of impact.
Yeah, but there's a positive bit at the end of this story when the boss comes and delivers the gift at the later date. Then the absenteeism goes away.
Whoa.
Okay.
Regardless of the date?
Regardless of the date. As soon as that boss comes and says, "I'm sorry, but here's your birthday gift," then the behavior returns to normal. And what the researchers said about we're talking about how significant this is, even though it's minimal, it's the perception. You feel slighted. You feel like you don't mean anything, that you don't belong. Mm-hmm. So a tip to listeners, if this ever happens, don't feel slighted, because they interviewed the bosses afterwards, and the bosses said, no, we didn't do this intentionally. We were swamped. We couldn't think of it.
Well, I was going to say I would give a different tip, which is to, speaking of bravery earlier, if you feel like you can, walk up to your boss and just be like, "Yo, this might seem small or petty, but it kind of hurt when I was the only one who didn't."
Or how about this at your company? Don't instate such a policy.
No, do.
Should you?
On behalf of all our listeners out there who probably are not managing a gigantic team, the ones who are being managed, you deserve a birthday present and a card. That's
but
my message.
if you make it an obligatory thing, then you're just setting the bowling pins up for failure.
I'm for presents and cards personally.
I'll keep that in mind, buddy.
Look forward to all our listener emails and messages on that one. Last little bit of science. I'll keep it quick because we're running out of time here. Out of 2 universities in Canada, and the message is clear. If you know somebody who's single, and they don't have a serious relationship going on, but you're somehow aware of the fact that they are engaging in casual sexual activity. Mm-hmm. What this paper sort of fights against is the idea that, like, oh, something's wrong with them. That's not very good, right? Oh, they're just doing like the hookup. They're part of the hookup culture. That's not good. It is good. They're doing better, these people, than the single people who are not doing that.
Okay, define better.
Yeah, so it was 2 separate studies, and what I liked about this was the second one was just confirming the first. Mm-hmm. Did we get it right? There were some small differences, but effectively 750 people, and they had an open box, a text. Describe your sexual relationship. Mm-hmm. Tell me what's going on in your life right now. Usually, it was friends with benefits.
Got it. So not in a relationship, but having sex. Okay.
Yeah, or an ex-partner, or some kind of consistent thing. And those people had lower attachment avoidance. So if you
more trust.
It's the idea that when people are like, oh, he can't open himself up, or she can't allow herself to be vulnerable. The people who are scared that by doing that, it's just going to hurt more when things get ended. So I'm going to close myself off. The people who are hooking up are more open and vulnerable and emotionally connected to other people.
All right.
The other thing is they valued themselves more highly. And specifically in terms of mate value, like how would other people look at you, Gabe? How would other people look at you, Connor? I would rate myself more highly if I'm involved in some casual sexual
and I'm not
scenarios.
And I'm not.
If you're not in those scenarios, then you would rate yourself more lowly.
Got it.
Or lower.
Yep.
And in the second version, some small differences, but they also found that there were lower levels of depression in the group that was going out and hooking up. Now, causality or correlation, obviously, if you're depressed, you're not going out.
You're not going out,
Yeah, and so, again, I'll stop right there. There's more I could get into, some small differences between those 2 groups and why. For example, the first group, 15% of the people were going out and hooking up. Second study, it was 26. Thinking, what? Why? What happened there? And it was
relatively low.
The authors say it was probably the COVID-19 pandemic that changed that first group compared to the second. Interesting study. You can look it up online if you would like. Who is doing it? Casual sex and well-being in singlehood, in the journal Personal Relationships.
Yeah, and the study on work being slighted in the workplace, the lower boundary of workplace mistreatment, do small slights matter?
Mm-hmm. And Veronica the Cow, if you want to go find her from a respectful distance, in the Austrian town, I think it is, of Nutsch. That's spelled with 2 dots over the O, that's called an umlaut. Nutsch is where that one is. And if you want to go see Big Bertha, the oldest cow that's ever lived, 48 years old, she is dead now, died in 1993, but she has been stuffed Stuffed, and she's in County Kerry, Ireland. If you have...
And Veronica and Big Bertha, they probably sound like this.
Please send us. That was good. Please send us your best cow noises or your thoughts on any of these studies. We love hearing what you think. su@dw.com.
Der Führer fuhr wieder als erster die neue Teilstrecke der Reichsautobahn München-Holzkirchen ab.
This is archive sound from the 1930s, different moments in the 1930s when the National Socialists, who were in power in Germany at that point in time, were celebrating their Autobahn.
Yeah.
The national highway, which was being constructed, and every time another phase of the Autobahn was opened, they had celebrations because to the Nazis, it was apparently very important to show the people of Germany that they were constructing this thing because it meant a lot.
Science Unscripted.
All right. Hi, my name is Nico Voigtländer. I'm a professor of economics at the UCLA Anderson School of Management in Los Angeles. And I just published a paper together with my co-author Joachim Voth on Highway to Hitler, looking at the effects of the German Autobahn.
Highway to Hitler. What was the main conclusion of that work, Nico?
So around the globe, we have aspiring dictators and autocrats. But usually those don't come out of nowhere. And in fact, often we see a transition from democracy to autocracy. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of background. In 1933, Hitler comes to power, and many people think that that's it. Then he's entrenched and there's no way to get rid of him anymore. But actually, historically, that's not the case. In fact, there's maybe what's telling this story very well is an interview that Hitler gave to Time magazine in June 1934, where he says, "Don't forget how people laughed at me 15 years ago when I declared that one day I would govern Germany. They laugh now just as foolishly when I declare that I shall remain in power."
So he is fully aware at this point that he's being laughed at, and that a lot of people throughout Germany would imagine that he's going to be kicked out or forced to leave at some point, and yet he thinks he has a trick up his sleeve still?
Not really. So there's the question then is, how does Hitler really become fully entrenched as a dictator? Now, initially, until the summer of 1934, there is still Hindenburg, who is the president of the Weimar Republic. And on paper, he actually has more power than Hitler. Hitler is only the chancellor up to that point. And then Hindenburg dies. And then Hitler, and this is what you might call the trick up his sleeve, he says we're now going to unify these two positions of chancellor and president, and all that power is going to be concentrated in Hitler's hand. But to get there, he needs a referendum. So he needs people to agree to that. And only after that referendum does he really become what we would now call the dictator with these immense powers.
How does the Autobahn fit into this process here, Nico?
Exactly. So now we know the setting. Now we can get back to the Autobahn. Okay? So the question then is, how do you convince people, especially people who are still opposed to Hitler, and there are many of those, to vote in favor of him essentially becoming dictator? Now, what happened in the months leading up to that referendum is that Germany started massive scale Autobahn construction. So what we look at in our paper is whether areas that are closer to Autobahn segments under construction actually voted more in favor of this referendum that made Hitler effectively a dictator.
And did they?
Yes, it did. So just to put this in context in terms of magnitude, by 1933, we have an election. It's not a free election anymore in November 1933, but it gives us kind of a good idea how much real opposition there is left to Hitler. And it's about 10% who oppose this election in 1933. Of these 10%, about 20% of them, so in actual numbers, 2%, switch from being against the Nazis to pro-Nazis if they have the Autobahn nearby.
So if you're close to the Autobahn, you're seeing the construction happening, and you're believing what Hitler is saying, or what the Nazis are saying, the propaganda that they're giving the people, or how exactly did it work that the Autobahn led to the Nazis, I don't know, becoming more popular? How did that work?
Yeah, so there's one more very interesting twist, which I haven't mentioned yet. And this is that we see where people have good radio coverage, our effects are particularly strong. And how do we interpret this? Well, in Germany, a lot of people have these Volksempfänger, or the radios, and they will listen to Nazi propaganda essentially nonstop on those radios. But what tells you that all of this is true, right? So the Nazis are going to tell about all the magnificent things that they're doing, but these are potentially far away from you, and you just listen to this on your radio. Now, if an Autobahn segment is being constructed right next to your city, or even going through your city, then you see, oh, wait a second. So they're talking about Autobahn, and it's actually true, it's happening here. So maybe all of the other things that they're talking about on the radio that they're doing are also true. So in this sense, we find that there's a strong complementarity between being exposed to radio propaganda and actually observing in person one of those projects.
So if I were to take your research or take it in the wrong direction, it effectively says if you're an autocrat or want to be one and you want to take full power of a country, build things in front of people and broadcast it all the time. That's the playbook, if there's one.
That's part of the playbook. I would say more broadly, you want to convince the masses that you're capable, and often the playbook then contains basically talking badly about democracy, saying democracy doesn't get anything done, there's just too many opposing players, so what we need is one strong man in power. And now I show you what this strong man in power can actually achieve. So in that sense, you're exactly right. So this is part of the dictator's playbook.
To kind of, I don't know, play the devil's advocate here, there's a dam in the United States that I've driven over or past, the Grand Coulee Dam. And in about the same time frame, kind of the Second World War time frame, that's when the U.S. president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, I think helped or was a part of commissioning this massive public works project. It's easy to target Hitler, one of the most notoriously awful human beings to have ever lived. But couldn't you also say that a large infrastructure project is simply, I don't know, something that most people want to see? You do want to see your tax dollars or euros or marks being turned into something that you can that makes your life better and you can see it right in front of your eyes?
Yeah. So I would even go one step back here and say what people want to see in general is they want to see the economy doing well. And these massive infrastructure projects often are perceived as a mirror of the economy doing well. And the example that you made with the dam in the US built by Roosevelt, that certainly goes in the same direction. Now, for an aspiring autocrat, right, you want to show that it's you who put the economy back on track. And in that sense, Hitler was actually lucky because we see, if we go back to the data from the time, the Great Depression in Germany, Germany starts to recover already in late 1932, before Hitler is even appointed chancellor. But that progress is initially relatively slow, and then people associate that economic recovery with Hitler. And the Autobahn is just a beautiful project that everyone can look at and say, look, this is how Hitler got the economy going again.
Nico, there are people listening to this show right now, not on every continent, but on most continents.
I think we've got Antarctica somewhere in there. Yeah.
What can they learn from your research that they didn't know before?
Well, one important thing is that if you have an aspiring autocrat, there is a process where that autocrat continues to accumulate more and more power. And that is just the same way that Hitler rose to being a dictator. And this is something, I mentioned this in the beginning, this is something that people often forget, that when Hitler comes to power, when he's appointed as chancellor in 1933, it's not yet all said and done. It's not inevitable at that point that he will rise to becoming the dictator of Germany. There is a process, and in that process, these aspiring dictators will try to manipulate the masses in their favor. So be careful when you observe that process and when you are being manipulated, and try to stop that process while it's ongoing and be aware of that process.
That was Nico Voigtländer speaking to us from Malibu about the Autobahn. He teaches at UCLA and has been studying for years now the effect that had on Nazi popularity. And what it could do for aspiring dictators or aspiring autocrats, as he said there.
Yeah, he was loath or hesitant to make direct comparisons to today. The context is so different, and it's kind of dangerous to make comparisons where they shouldn't necessarily be made. But I think there's still valuable information there for everyone out there. Anytime a major construction project, massive, one of those prestige projects is announced in your own backyard or somewhere close, it's good to think, okay, why? Why is this happening? Does this make sense? Do we need this? Or is this an attempt to kind of buy my support, possibly with debt from that people have to pay off in the future?
Because if it is the latter, we know from history now that can have a real effect on the popularity of that aspiring autocrat.
Mm-hmm. And last thing I'll say here, and this is neither here nor there, it's just the microphones were off a couple minutes ago and we were discussing something that is, I don't know, kind of a nice way to send you off, is the one of the best songs, I think, personally, this is just personal opinion, by the German band Kraftwerk, if you're familiar with them.
Could be one of the most famous songs that has ever come out of Germany.
Yeah, and it's called
Fahren, fahren, fahren auf der Autobahn.
Yeah, it's just called Autobahn, if you want to give that a listen after the show. Gabe, you were saying that it's...
Those guys wrote that song because a little stretch of road between Bonn and Cologne, it's a relatively short Autobahn. That's the road that they drove back and forth. They were I guess, for work, going back and forth between Cologne and Bonn at that point in time. That was the first piece of Autobahn ever finished. That was it. That's where it all began. And Hitler was given credit for that. Germans, until today, will say, yeah, Hitler built that. Not true. That was the Weimar, that was created and planned and constructed during the Weimar Republic. Hitler had nothing to do with that. So his propaganda and the propaganda of his cronies to this day is still working. Mm-hmm.
And so I will try to undo it a touch, or to change the association you have with at least that stretch of the Autobahn. We've got the song by Kraftwerk, and the other thing is, for those of you who paid attention when we were talking about wild mice, female mice, and why they sometimes mate with multiple males in acts of polyandry, they collected those mice right close to that first stretch between Cologne and Bonn, that first stretch of Autobahn, the 555. To do that study. So it's all connected. Everything's connected. We will leave it there, huh?
All right.
Anything to say on the Autobahn or that historical period, or is there a prestige project going on in your own backyard? Or anything else, really?
Or propaganda?
Yeah, let us know. Let us know. su@dw.com.
DW, made for minds.